Hey everybody, it's Carm here, coming to you on a rather cold and wet Monday afternoon. Yeah, the last couple of days have been really, it's dropped quite a bit temperature-wise, and it's pretty wet and gloomy. I think fall's really has settled in here after being really summer-like for the most part up till now. So yeah, I wanted to try to come on one more time, before the actual day of Halloween, and got a little time here, and I just wanted to show a few more things as far as listening, reading, and viewing. This should be a little shorter than the last one. Don't have as much here to show, and yeah, I'll start right in with some music here. Now, this first one here might be a little, might take a few people by surprise who've known me for a while on here. I might have mentioned them a few times, but this is actually an old favorite and something I like to pull out around this time of year. And this one in particular, I actually showed the LP of this, which is actually my dad's copy, when I did a response video to Colin Medicine Horse, his Halloween contest a few years back. I showed it on here. This is actually a deluxe expanded edition here. You got the original album. Well, I think it's actually the US version up top, and then you have bonus cuts. This first one, Evil Woman, was on the original Vertigo album. So kind of have the whole, the full thing here, including that, and a lot of outtakes, instrumentals, and alternate versions of different tunes. And yeah, I first heard them in high school, and I was never generally into hard rock, heavy metal, or whatever, the various genres and subgenres. But I always found them to be kind of off the wall and quirky, especially the really early stuff. And I still find it enjoyable after all this time. And something about this first album, which is just, was so different for the time. I mean, I don't know much about heavy music in general, but I mean, it was pretty heavy for that period, 1969, 1970, and thematically, and just the approach is a lot different. But again, they're a group that needs a very little introduction to at least some of you out there. But yeah, it's perfect for Halloween. And then, yeah, I listened to this. I was telling Gary about alluding to something I had listened to coming home in the middle of the night from a late night at work, about 2:30 in the morning, and played this in the car on the way home. And yeah, if you know that first piece, the title cut, yeah, that time of night, it's very fitting. Yeah, still fun after all this time. And speaking to Gary, he kindly sent me a couple things recently, which I want to show here, related to the season. He talked a lot about this Drew's Famous series, music and sound effects and all kinds of stuff. And this has a combination of Halloween tunes and sound effects. Oh, here's the director, right here, just off camera. Yeah, the first half is a lot of pretty well-known pieces, classical repertoire. Toccata and Fugue on there, Night on Bald Mountain, Moonlight Sonata, Bolero's in there, it's interesting, Funeral from Barry Lyndon, Crypto Night, Ride of the Valkyries, and the second half is sound effects, all kinds of creaking and banging and boiling sounds, and yeah, it's very appropriate. I spun this, was doing some cleaning the other day, and I just put it on repeat and just played it for a few hours. So excellent. This is an old favorite I've had for quite a while, and very fitting. Wendy Carlos, Tales of Heaven and Hell. First time I listened to this, I remember really liking it, and then after a while I got a little, well, she says in here it's genuinely scary. I mean, it's more campy than scary, but it is a lot of fun. Especially the first piece, it has a kind of almost kind of like an after-school special, like after-school Halloween special type thing. it could almost be animated or something for kids, maybe late grade school or middle school. Kind of has that kind of appeal to it. But really, it's a lot of fun. I think this came out in the 90s. Let's see the year. I think I remember it being from the late 90s. Like I've had it for probably 20 years. But there's a piece on here called a Clockwork Black, which is a variation on the Clockwork Orange, which he scored, and has it just kind of brings back themes from that and expands upon it. Yeah, it's the longest piece on here, over 17 minutes. But, I actually haven't played this one this season yet, so I'll queue it up for a little later on, I think. Now this next one I just found recently, and I have Chris Kibler to thank for showing this and reminding me of it. I had forgotten that he had done this. Dracula, Philip Glass, Kronos Quartet performing. Yeah, spun this the other night. A lot of fun. Very much, his kind of patented style, repetitive. Just that kind of undulating, almost like riding on a train kind of sound. Just has that continuous momentum to it. But has a little creepy vibe as well. Yeah, I think it's the actual scoring of the original the Bela Lugosi film. That version, in the early 30s. So it's a lot of fun. And there's one more here. It's an old favorite. It kind of fits the season, I think, to a degree. Has a sound to it. Konrad Schnitzler, Ballet Statique. I've had this one for a very long time. I might have still been in high school when I picked this up, or maybe a little after. It's a 1992 Splax reissue. If you know him, great. Late great German electronic musician. This is probably one of his more accessible albums. It'd be a good introduction to him if you're not familiar. With some dark soundscapes on here. I may as well show what I'm playing in the background. Another artist I got into fairly recently, maybe in the last 10 years, Rudiger Lorenz, Fata Morgana. I like his stuff in general. Kind of has a Halloweenish vibe. I just kind of grabbed it and just put it on just because I hadn't heard it in a while, but I'm finding it does kind of fit nicely. So yeah, that's pretty much for the. And I showed in the last video a lot of other stuff in the rotation been listening to. The director's looking right at me. He's just off camera there. Very relaxed though, taking it all in. A couple of books here, and again I have to thank Gary. Sent you showed this in maybe his second or third to last video. It's actually pictured in his thumbnail, which I'll leave a link to it if I can remember. Harvest Tales and Midnight Reveals, Stories for the Waning of the Year. Edited by Michael Mayhew, illustrated by Mona Karan. Yeah, I talked a great deal about this, a great length about this book. A fellow who wanted to, he'd been nostalgic for Halloween, he was talking about getting into college and seeing that it seemed to have been waning a little bit, the interest. He didn't see trick-or-treaters around as much as usual, but he also wanted to get more in touch with it from an adult's perspective, and later on got together with some friends, some particularly creative friends, and he wanted to find ways to just celebrate this time of year and show that it's in the back here, Halloween is not just for children. So he got them to write stories and share them, and he compiled them, and they would have these get-togethers where they would they'd show the stories they wrote. They would tell stories, almost kind of like around the campfire or the living room in this case. Yeah, at the top it's what do you do when your girlfriend dumps you for a corpse? What do you do when the freeway gods demand a blood sacrifice? What do you do when the violence in your soul becomes a living nightmare? So, and all I've gotten is just gotten as far as the introduction so far. I just picked it up yesterday and really started going through it, but yeah, looking forward to getting more absorbed into this. And yeah, thanks once again, Gary. Probably the biggest Halloween fan I know. Now this next one I found maybe a week and a half ago, and was really glad to come across this. Great fun here. Yeah, Chicago TV horror movie shows, from Shock Theater to Svengoolie. Now this ties in with, well, you see the poster behind me? It came from Berwyn, Svengoolie. And this here, now this was taken about, I think it was right around this time of year, so sometime in October, I think it was in '81. You can see Svengoolie there. And that little fella in front of him is myself. Yeah, taken way back when. Svengoolie is a, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure some of you are aware if you have, if you're either from this area, Chicagoland area, or if you have MeTV and you watch that at all. He's a, you know, what you can call like a horror host. He would show old movies, B-movies, horror shows, and he would come on in between and do various skits and kind of incorporate himself into the whole fabric of it. And he had been doing it since the late 70s. There was an original character called Svengoolie, Jerry G. Bishop, from the early 70s, a little before my time, but he's the character that I grew up with from the early 80s onward. And I believe this was the Hobie Day Parade, which is part of our local town's lore for many years. And yeah, somehow I was able to get on there for, you know, and take a picture with him. I think I might have another one. I thought I remember having another picture, another pose. But yeah, just wanted to share that real quick. It's great, you know, looking back on that, and yes, some of you, I'm sure, you know, might be aware of them, and in your own town, maybe you had the same thing growing up. You know, this kind of thing. It goes back to the 50s here. Oh, and the two hosts are really, or hosts, the authors, really a lot of fun recalling their own memories. When he starts here, during my generally misspent youth, I mean, I resonated with me right away, the opening lines there. But yeah, it starts off with some of the original characters. Yeah, WSNS Channel 44. I think I could even remember that station. We had WFLD, which became 32. Became Fox 32 later on. That one in particular I grew up with. Oh, here's I think it was the original Svengoolie here. If I can find this picture. Oh, here's Son of Svengoolie from the time that I remember. Yeah, Channel 32, WFLD. Yeah, anyone from Chicagoland area knows that for sure. Probably grew up with it. Find the original one here. They have all kinds of other things. The Shock Theater, which my folks remember growing up with. But it is another one I just started with. I started reading. Oh, here's Jerry G. Bishop, the original Svengoolie, in the early 70s. So I find him here in character. Yeah, there he is in character. I guess he's supposed to be sort of like a countercultural or sort of a hippie ghoul. And again, you had the Son of Svengoolie coming after him. But yeah, so much fun. It just, you know, this definitely brings me back to, and they're writing from a perspective of, they're about a generation older than myself. Oh, here's Rich Coes, who plays the Son of Svengoolie. The Co-Zone, which is a more oriented towards kids. Came out in the late 80s, early 90s. And I remember that from, you know, early on in high school. He did all kinds of characters on here too, except not everyone but Svengoolie. But again, more oriented towards kids. But, yeah, as I get further into this, I'll talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, great looking back over it. Just a couple of videos here. This one I watched about a couple weeks ago. Didn't show it the last time. Ghost of Flight 401. It's one of those things I found, I think it's still in the player. One of those things I found at Real Art. It was kind of a burned DVD. Kind of a second-hand made thing, but it's in this, Ernest Borgnine is in this. It's from the late 70s. It first aired on NBC in February of 1978. Yeah, that was pretty fun, campy stuff. And finally here, one I haven't even opened yet. I found this not long ago. Torture Never Stops, Evening with Frank Zappa. Now this ties in with Halloween, being that him and his group in the late 70s, early 80s, they used to do Halloween shows in New York. I filmed live at the Palladium, New York City, Halloween 1981. They would do a annual Halloween show for some time. I think eventually, not long after this, they stopped doing them. But yeah, you've got Black Napkins, Montana, see Charlie's Enormous Mouth, The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing, Jumbo Go Away, Torture Never Stops. So, some Zappa classics there. So look forward to getting into this. Did a little bit of video, this before in the past, but yeah, it's always part of the overall festivities. So yeah, just wanted to come on and share some of these, and again a little bit of the local lore. And yeah, if you're not familiar with Son of Svengoolie, check them out. There's a wonderful YouTube station I got into maybe in the last 5 years called the Museum of Classic Chicago Television / Fuzzy Memories, which shows a lot of commercials and tidbits and bumpers from stuff that was on television from going back to the 60s through the 80s for the most part. A lot of 70s stuff, so if anyone grew up with that, definitely check it out. I try to remember to put some information about it. So yeah, I hope we're all doing well. Been kind of busy overall lately, but I got a little time to come on, and I'm going to try to come on at least one, or if not two more times, before the actual day if I can, and maybe show a little bit more. So I hope we're well and keeping warm and relatively dry where you're at. And from the director and I, who hasn't been seen, until next time, peace, love, and joy.